God failed to fill my love. And I, AA member, experience care all of these that I may still find a faith that works.
That I or they, any of us, can we still find a faith that works? And that's a lot to go against. You know, this is one here is real tough. This first one's got to be the hardest. Just think if you were going to church, doing everything you're supposed to be doing, you're hanging out at church, and then you're getting drunk still. You're doing drugs, you know what I mean? But you're going to church, you're doing all the things, and so you're talking to God, you're singing, you're standing up, you're saying all the good things you want to say, and then you go get loaded. You know, you do it time and time again. You wonder, well, what's wrong? What's wrong with this church thing? And this goes on to help us understand. This is a real hell of a spot for somebody who's go ahead and read that first paragraph there, because this is where I think a lot of us may fall into. Go ahead.
Sometimes,
yeah.
Sometimes they come harder to those who have lost or rejected faith than to those who've never had any faith at all.
So let's just take that thought for a second. Even in recovery, we'll notice, as everything cycles, there's points in recovery where you feel like you're more attuned, where you're less attuned. Again, who's judging that? That's you judging your own place of where God's at in you. So supposed to stay out of there, but I'm sure you guys never do that. But other people probably judge where they're at with God, where they've been, how they're doing, whether they at this year or that year, how they were at 5 years or 3 years or 4 years or 10 years or 15, whatever it is. And that's that mind that's always wondering, how am I doing right now? Instead of asking God how I'm doing, I'm wondering how I'm doing right now. I'm trying to think of how am I doing right now, as opposed to, God, can you give me some enlightenment about how I'm doing right now? Maybe you could show me some signs and some things I might work on right now. And those signs will come to trust really well. But it's telling me, it's like, look, if you lost or rejected faith, then you're going to have a harder time than the people who are complete atheists. You know what an atheist is? An atheist is somebody that believes in the proof of the non-existence of God. There's not too many of them around anymore that will stand up and say it, but the proof of the non-existence of God. I always say when someone says I'm an atheist, I say, what does it mean? There's a lot of people say they're atheists and they don't know what it means. That's a little concerning. You know what I'm saying? If you're going to be something, you should know what it means. So it means that I believe in the proof of the non-existence of God. Well, that's going down to Darwinism. That's going back, and it doesn't mean that, in Darwinism, it's the idea that, natural selection, that everything selects itself based on how to perpetuate itself. But where does that come from? Again, that's a state of evolution, something grow. Why isn't it random selection? Why isn't it chaotic selection? Why is it natural selection? Well, it's an order. It's not as much as you're saying there's no existence of God, you're saying, but there is a hell of an order going on. And see, like begets like, meaning every species is trying to perpetuate itself to a more and more better, and better. What's driving that? Again, you're talking about something beyond man that's still wanting it to improve itself. Why? Why not just chaos? So the chaos theory doesn't really work. So I don't know if we're struggling with that so much, but how about the person that had God and feels like they lost God? Or the person that was going to church, feel like they're doing everything they should be doing, and then things aren't feeling so good. Or going to AA meetings, attending a lot of AA meetings, hanging out with the right AA crowd, or whatever it is you think is right, or CA, DA, whatever AA you're involved in, and then you're hanging out there and everything is going good, all of a sudden things get drifty, or that meeting breaks down, or those people aren't hanging out anymore, that coffee shop's not doing it anymore, that social hangout isn't happening anymore, and it changes like things in life do. And does that mean your recovery slacked off? Does that mean you've lost or rejected faith? Well, we can wander, and it happens. And it talks about in step 12 about what can happen to people in long-standing recovery. You can get lost. You go through the steps, you've done some work, and all of a sudden, man, you're gone. You're lost. You don't know what happened. And it's pretty simple. What do you think happened? You stop living in application according to the principles because you think you've done them. And this is where we get caught up, and we have to start to look at what kind of things can happen, you know what I mean? And what that represents for all of us is like, what that really means, what it means when they say two-step. And I know we've all heard that word. And so 112, last paragraph says, hey, man, it happens. You're not supposed to judge it. You're not supposed to get up and down, but it's something worth noting that could be coming up, or maybe even a position you're in right now. It hasn't gone flat. That's your mind thinking it's gone flat. How could it have gone flat? There's no difference between your connection and God today than it was yesterday, except it should be improved. So how could it be flatter? You're more aware. It's like almost you bring some people around and you say, hey, look, I want you to take a look at this malady. And the malady means that I'm going to tell you that you may have a disease of your mind. And that disease in your mind means that you've got a virus. You've got a disease that's centering your mind. You brought it on, and you call it alcoholism, drug addiction. And those are the effects of the disease, but that's not the cause. And if you stop drinking and using or shopping or doing whatever you're doing, that's not going to stop that driving mechanism, that malady. So just consider, if you will, if you have this malady, if you have any warped thoughts. Just take a look in the day you're in, see if you have some thoughts that one might consider warped. Well, usually we get people coming back here in a panic state after a couple of weeks of looking for warped thoughts, that they're riddled with these thoughts that are so destructive in life. How could life ever be good? My God, they're destroying everybody and everything around them, and it's just driving them. Oh my God, so much needs to change. And everybody's like, hey, take it easy, take it easy. You've been doing this all along. You're just becoming aware of it now. This is a good thing, not a bad thing. But panic is the first thing that happens because somehow you think you're going to tend to it. And even, you know, I hear a lot of things, a lot of philosophies out there, but nobody's talking about 70,000 thoughts a day. How are you going to objectify and be the knower and the known of the objector, of the seer at the rate of 70,000 thoughts a day? Those are a lot of parties to consider when you have to be all those things. You see, and again, lack of power is my dilemma. I can't just objectify and think it's my ego or think it's self. I think that I know what it is. There has to be a certain part of me, and that's what this step is saying, that you could get lost or astray in this message. And if you get lost or astray, it's only because you think you've gotten lost or astray. Come back to the principles that are guiding you, and this stuff will start to guide you. So in this paragraph, it's going to talk a little bit more about that. But before we go there, let's check a little bit about what goes on from this. Finish this paragraph real quick.
One more.
Yeah.
One more. How will I come to terms with seeing failure ocean set?
No, Joe. Go all the way down the bottom. I'm sorry. Of course, yes.
All AA, even events fall short of such achievement as a consistent thing, without necessarily taking that first string. I can often get quite far off the beam. My troubles sometimes begin with indifference. I am sober and happy in my AA walk. Things go well on and off. I naturally congratulate myself on the later hard to be superficial. I can temporarily cease to grow because I feel satisfied that there is no need for all of the AA 12 steps again. I'm doing fine on a few of them. Maybe I am doing fine on the fourth. First step, and that part of the cup when I carry left. And AA is like that blissful state known as the first step, and it's going again.
So that's what I was trying to say. Now that done in reference to me, hey, look, anybody can fall into two-step. And the minute you start to think you're not doing it anymore, that's why these steps are, you know, they're a loop. They're AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in their nature. A group is many components that make up a whole. If you touch one, you touch them all, but you've got to keep touching them. There's never a done point. It's a hard concept. I really do. I know that's hard. At 23 years of recovery, I myself, you know, and as much as I've been involved in this program, know that it's hard to think that sometimes I got to go back to step one, but if that's the way I feel, that's where I got to go back to. And meaning that's the way I feel is that inside something's unmanageable. I'm not feeling right now. I'm more worried than I should be. Or I'm not ready to do the things I should do. Or I'm taking on concerns that I shouldn't be taking on. It starts back at step one, and I got to go back and know I'm trying to manage my own life again, just like I did long ago when I came into this 20 plus years ago. That I was trying. That's the only thing it could be. That's the proof in the pudding. If I'm rattled in here, I'm trying to manage my own life again. That's what it means. Dash, my life is unmanageable by me for the rest of my life. So I must have indicators to let me know I'm heading towards that unmanageable life. Otherwise, how could I ever call on a power greater than myself or become aware that I need this power? Again, once I enter into that state, I'm no longer in recovery. Now I'm the circumstantial guy. I'm not the virtuous guy anymore. I'm the two-stepper. It doesn't matter what I've done before, how well you've worked the steps. None of that stuff will carry you through today. What carries you through today is the recovery you have today. That's what carries you. There's no debit. There's no credit cards, or you get good grace. I mean, I used to always think, man, I've been doing this a while. I should have a little inertia, right? You should just be like, good momentum going your way. Some things going your way. Yeah, the spiritual bank, the recovery bank, wherever the hell it is, man. You know how many people I've talked to in recovery over these many years? I mean, I've talked to a lot of people. You think, man, there'd be something that goes with that. But that isn't what it's about. It's not a cash in. There is no credit. What you get is the life that you have. What you get is those moments where you realize nothing else is necessary and I feel great. and I'm around friends, or I'm around people that I love, or I look at my relationships and I'm great. I just have a moment of gratitude. God, I'm so grateful that I have this friendship, this enjoyable person. You know, the intimacy that I get to have. I do it all the time with Laura. One of my best friends in recovery is a woman, and I've never had a woman as a friend, and one of my best friends sits right here as a woman. How does that happen? I know I'm not capable of doing that, but yet it's here. It's not only here, it's been built. And one of the greatest values in my life, you know what, like I said, I treat my friendships one day at a time, like I'm going to spend with that person one day at a time the rest of my life. And I wonder, am I treating that person accordingly? Am I looking at them, thinking about them, and acting towards them according to that petition, according to that truth, or am I just taking them for granted, or I think they're going to be there? People around me know what I care about them. They know how I feel about them because I've learned to express myself. And I've learned to ask them, how are you feeling? What's going on with you? It's not always about me. I've learned that that's what relationships are about through these steps. So this two-stepping thing and this thing I can get diverted from is the same thing in relationship in step 2. I have a relationship with God in step 2. That's what it means to come to believe that a power greater than myself can restore my sanity. Whether I'm in church, I don't care where you're at, it's about a relationship. And I'll ask you right now, how is your relationship with God? How is it today? You see, because that's what it's about. How does it feel right now sitting in this chair? How are you? Have you come to believe in something greater than yourself? Are you with that power right now? Can you connect to that power right now? Because you know what? It's always there. I can connect while I talk, while I think. I can do 10 things and still stay connected to God. See, that's what it should be, because how could I ever disconnect? How could any of us truly ever go, okay, you can disconnect for God for this long time, then come back. Well, make sure you get back because you don't want to stay away too long. There has to be a way to stay connected all the time. Well, that's a relationship, right? Am I connected to my personal relationships all the time? When I think about them, I energize them, yeah, then I'm connecting to them. I think about Laurel will call. Laurel thinks of me, I might call. We all have friends like that, and people you're closest to, they're the ones, I was just thinking about you. Yeah, I know, isn't that crazy? It's like common ground to say that right now, but it's really quite a miracle to realize you're connected. That's a connection, man. That's by the grace of God that you have that connection. Can you come to believe in the power greater than yourself over that? And build that relationship even further, because my best relationship needs to be with God. That needs to be my primary relationship. So if my friendships are suffering, then you bet my relationship with God is probably suffering. Whatever relationships are injured, you can probably recognize there's some injury going on with God, something missing with God in that area. So step 2 is helping me to say, look, man, these are some of the blocks you go to. If you've lost or rejected faith, and that just means in a moment. Lost or rejected faith means that I can be totally in faith and have God, but all of a sudden I'm in fear, I'm in panic about what's coming. I've lost, or I'm rejecting the faith that's there because I'm now in worry, because I'm now concerned about tomorrow's or yesterday's, which screw all of us up. You know, I cannot go back to my yesterdays and change them anymore. I want to go to my yesterdays and see how they have improved the quality of my life. They can no longer be looking at my yesterdays and go, God, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Damn, I couldn't have messed up there. I could have made it so much better if I hadn't done that. That is taboo. Because if you're questioning yesterdays, you're just going to bring that question into today. And how are you going to look forward with any kind of positive look forward if you're looking back with regret and remorse about the decisions you've made, the actions you've taken, the people you're hanging out with? Everything serves a purpose. Everybody has a purpose. And everything is leading you to a greater purpose, or it's not. Which one do you want? So that's where the pain comes in. That's where I can lose or reject that faith. Any moment I start thinking, it's not the way it should be because I'm not happy right now. Well, not being happy right now or being happy right now has nothing to do with conditions. We read that in step 4. It says, I got to stop living in a world where I'm trying to change conditions, and I learn to change me to meet the conditions, whatever they are. So that means that if things are going a certain pace, I'm not going to resist them anymore. I'm going to go with that pace. If people are thinking this is a better way to do something, then I'm going to go with that flow. I'm not going to resist it. I'm going to see, why do they think that? Instead of my mind telling me, I don't want to change it. We don't need to change it. If it works, don't fix it, right? Because sometimes things just change. There's a natural order of things of evolution, but I resist change, don't you? You know why I resist change? Because I'm so insecure that I need everything to remain the same, even if it's dysfunctional. That's what codependency is all about. It's not that I'm afraid to have a new relationship. It's just I don't want to leave the old one. That doesn't make sense. The reason I don't want to leave the old one is because I don't want to enter into the unknown. The unknown is what I've been scared of my entire life. But when have you ever not lived in the unknown? Think about it for a second in your life. It's like, when have you ever gone, I know now. Now it's all known. It's all known now. It's always been unknown. You don't know what's going to happen next month. You don't know how it's going to go. The unknown, like I do this job, right? And then like things aren't going well. I'm not getting along with the company or the boss or whatever, or I'm not getting along. There's conflict going on, but I don't want to leave it because I've been doing that for 20 years. How could I ever leave this? I've been doing it so long. I'm making enough money. I mean, my retirement's right around the corner. Are you happy? No, but that doesn't matter. I mean, it's just a little bit longer of misery. I can be miserable another 5, 10 years, and look what I'll get at the end. I'll get this. What will I get? I'll get the unknown again. At the end, you're going to get the unknown because that job's going to end. But I don't think like that. I just think I want to finish this thing out because it's what I know, it's what I do best. And yeah, I wish I could change something, but I couldn't afford to make a change like that. How would I feed my family? And then instinct and logic come in to seek to bolster egotism and then stop me from moving any kind of forward movement. What if there was no time, and what if you never were going to fail? Then what would you try? Think about it for a second. If you knew you weren't going to fail, what would you try to do in this life today? Those are good questions to ask because with the grace of God, you need never fail. There is no failure in recovery. It's a program recovery, not failure. That's something I had to learn. We don't fail here anymore. You can't. You cannot design a program recovery for broken people with a malady in their mind and say, yeah, check it out, but you're going to fail once in a while. You're just not going to fail as much as you did before. Because my mind won't work that way. Failure is failure. So you have to tell me this either works or doesn't work. And then I have to find out that there's no loopholes. You have to prove to me that it works, and then I might start taking some of this piece by piece. And that's what these lectures are about. This is these Wednesdays are all about, is realizing this stuff does work. It is the real stuff. This is how you do it, and it will be okay. And the hoop I have to jump through is a lot wider than I think. And I don't need to panic because all in all, most of the time when you're panicking, right now you're okay. And that's what we start to remember in step 2 is like, right now I'm okay. Sometimes during the recovery, that's what you get, but that's all you wanted. All you wanted to know is that right now I'm okay. We forget that stuff when we come in here because we get used to being okay right now. And once it gets okay right now, well, now we want it to be okay later too. Not just right now, but can we make it okay later too? And now I start to go that way. Okay, God, I like it now, but would a little more help us out a little bit? And that's that mind that always looking for more. If there needs to be more, God will bring more. And my job is to improve the quality of my relationship. And step 2 is going to help me do it. Let's finish this paragraph real quick about this block in step 12. Go ahead, Joe. Finish that up. Oh, we did, right? The fears. Okay, back to 28 then. And then we'll take a look at what we're talking about here now. When it says that this plight that we're going through, we got to the first sentence there. Someone want to finish that paragraph? Page 28, it's a second paragraph. Just read that. We're going to read that whole paragraph there. Someone want to read that?
Sometimes alcoholic. Sometimes AA becomes harder to those who have lost or rejected faith and to those who never have had faith at all. So they think they have tried faith and found it wanting. They have tried the way of faith and the way of no faith. Since both ways have proved bitterly disappointing, they have concluded there is no place whatever for them to go.
Think about that for a second. That's a hell of a spot. That's not the last paragraph. That's the first one introducing us to the hurdles that we're going to go through in trying to come to believe in the power of greater self, because most people have either lost or rejected faith. And they're telling you the struggles are going to be this, is you're going to think you've tried the way of faith. Note the key word, think. And you're going to think you tried the way of no faith. Both will prove bitterly disappointing, so there's no place whatsoever for you to go. Just think about that. It isn't a conscious thought. It's an internal feeling. And have you ever had that feeling like you got nowhere to go? You can't go the way of faith, and you can't go the way of going to hell in a handbasket either. None of them work. You can't do drugs and alcohol and just forget about it. But God, you come over here to recovery, and you can't stand these people in recovery, these dry, sober knuckleheads either, and so you don't like that either. So you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. Don't like AA and don't like the people getting loaded. Now I'm screwed. So is it the people in AA? Is it the people getting loaded? Or what's the common denominator here? You, me. I'm the common denominator. I'm the one that can't get along that way or this way. So when am I going to find my place in this world? If I'm not going to find it now, I don't want to wait anymore. See, that's the whole thing. This postponed fulfillment game, I'm over it. I've lived it too long to just keep waiting to be happy. I've lived it too long to think I'm going to feel better somewhere down the road over this. I have learned in recovery, though, the right action is the key to good living, and that grieving and suffering is a part of life, and that emotions won't last. I heard a great line on a movie the other night that I really like. It's a movie about recovery, actually. It's about sexual addiction, believe it or not. It's called Thanks for Sharing. And it's a really good movie. I think it's out right now in the movie theaters. Anyway, there's a great line about emotions, that emotions are like children in cars, driving with children in cars. You know, you don't want them driving, but you can't stick them in the trunk. You know, and that's emotions. You got to ride with them. It means you got to ride with them sometimes. And that you just go with it, and they won't kill you. And tomorrow, you know what? They will nowhere near have the power that they have today. This is the trick. This is the thing I got to remember, is that my feelings won't kill me. My feelings, I used to think that feelings would kill me. You know what? So did a lot of people in recovery. Matter of fact, it's a common denominator with alcoholics and drug addicts that we're afraid feelings are going to kill us. It tells us this in step 7 about how afraid we exactly are of what these feelings do, what we're going to do to them. Page 74, last paragraph, talks about what happens when we think feelings are coming up or something's going to hurt us.
This improved perception of humility starts another revolutionary change in our outlook.
So what's going to happen now? Stefan's going to turn all this crap that's happening, they're going to say, you're going to use it as an improved perception to life. We're sorry that you had to get beaten down to do it, but that's your own choices in making. But we're going to see if we can now take that which you've been beaten down and do something with it and make it prosperous to your life. Go ahead.
Our eyes begin to open to the immense values that come straight out of painful legal functioning. Until now, our lives have been largely devoted to running from pain and problems.
Okay, those are feelings. Feelings are pain and problems, right? You don't think you're going to have a problem. You feel like you're going to have. When the feelings come, that's when you do the running. And this says, so now we feel trouble. What happens next? What happens when people like us feel trouble?
We fled from them as from a plague.
That's a pretty severe description, right? Saying, uh-oh, pain, problem. Uh-oh, I might get an owie. Oh, I might feel something. I'm out the door. I run like it's the plague. It's not like I run, I got to go, excuse me, I'm doing a short, quick announcement, I got to go. It's like, pew, I'm gone. And see, that's why we disappear in life. Why those relationships disappear, why those jobs disappear, why those situations disappear. Because we question them to the death, and once we feel there's a pain or problem, we've already exited out of it. The people already know we're leaving. Our conscience is already left. You think you're going to leave that job, long before you leave that job, they know you're gone. With people like us, because we're sour pusses. And when we're going to leave, we don't leave quietly. We leave with no grace whatsoever, and it's written on our face. In other words, we're walking around with this scowl look on our face, acting like we're okay and everything's fine. And it's a lie. You got to stop living the lie. It's telling me, dude, you run from your pain. You feel any kind of pain or problem, you run like it's the plague. And then I got to grab a hold of that, and it's saying no more of that. Go ahead and finish that up.
We fled from them as plague. We never wanted to deal with the fact of suffering. Escape via the bottle was always our solution. Character building through suffering might be all right for saints, but it certainly didn't appeal to me. And
again, it's telling us that word, character building. These steps are all about building a new character. They're all about building a character. No reference to the old, a new character. Character building principles. These are truths in application. They will build a new character with a new consciousness and manifest a psychic change in an order form. And that's why they're ordered from 1 to 12. You don't go from 2 to 8 and 6 to 5 or whatever. You got to go in an order form from 1 to 12. That's why they're numbered for people like us who think, oh, I got this one, I'm just going to go there. Well, if you got this one, that one, let me hear what you got there, because that should shoot you into the next one. Each step shoots you into the next one if it's properly applied. Each step that you're in doesn't need the preceding step. 2 does not need 3 anymore. 3 does not need 4. 4 does not need 3 anymore. Once you start to get in through these steps, you start to realize 7 doesn't need 6. In 12, you start to realize you have a way of life, but you're still in 1. They just don't have a need for each other anymore, if that makes any sense. But each step pushes you forward into that perpetual loop as you keep on looping through these steps for the rest of your life. Because, again, it's just but the beginning of a lifetime practice. Okay, so that's just telling me how I run from the pain and the problems. Let's go back to 28 and finish that right up there, that paragraph there. Since both ways, it's telling me I tried, we were looking at, I think I've tried the way, I tried it without it, and that's where it just spells everything. If I tried it, it would have worked. If you did it, it would have happened. If you really tried recovery, you'd be in recovery. It's not a failure. So it tells me I think I did stuff, but if I did it, it would be there. That's what I've learned in life. When you do it, then it happens. If you don't do it, it doesn't happen. Go ahead.
The roadblocks of indifference, fancy self-sufficiency, prejudice, and defiance often prove more solid and formidable for me than any erected by the unconvinced, agnostic, or even the militant atheist.
So that's just telling me, saying, so when you do lose or reject faith, or you're in that particular moment, you look for indifference, you look for self-sufficiency, you become prejudiced, you're defiant, And these are the foundations at which you try and anchor your life from, why you slip back into that hole. Because when you're not with that power greater than yourself, you'd rather anchor on defiance, you'd rather anchor on to things that are resistance, things that was telling me I'm going to hang on to indifference. Indifferent means I feel nothing. If I'm indifferent, that means I have no feeling whatsoever. I'm numb. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Didn't you used to love how you could just sit in those relationships and be numb? Not feel a damn thing and feel that's a sense of power? That is no power. You're just indifferent. But the problem is you don't understand the reaction to that action. You don't want to feel anything, then you don't feel anything. But your whole life is built on trying to feel something. So it's real catch-22 because you always want to feel better, don't you? But if you become indifferent, there is no feeling better. Remember, there is no feeling in indifference. So we can't ever become numb as much as we think we'd like to, or that would be the best place to be. But it tells me these are the things that turn out to be more solid. I'd rather go for that than to try and learn how to come to believe in the power greater myself. Go ahead.
Religion says the existence of God can be proved. The agnostic says it can't be proved. And the atheist claims proof of the non-existence of God. Obviously, the dilemma of the wanderer from faith is that of profound confusion. He deems himself lost to the comfort of any conviction at all. I cannot attain in even a small degree the assurance of the believer, the agnostic or the atheist. I am the bewildered one.
I'm dealing with somebody that's actually in this paragraph, and they are having a hard time getting out of it. And check it out, they're not a drug addict or alcoholic either, man. So this stuff is tough for all of us. It really is. And yeah, I work with people that are drug addicts and alcoholics. And this particular person I'm working with is struggling with this as hard as I've seen any addict or drug addict or alcoholic. And he's on that indifference. He lost his faith. Lost his faith, man. That's some serious stuff. And he had, very hardcore faith before, but he lost it. And he thinks he's kind of got some of it, and then some of this and some of that, and that's the problem. You do this a la carte stuff, and it doesn't work that way. That's why there's an order for him. And what it tells you, what happens, you become the bewildered one. So this week, let's look for those roadblocks of indifference, self-sufficiency, prejudice, or defiance. Recognize that what's happening is you're becoming the bewildered one. There's a reason that you're anchoring onto these, because you're anchoring onto that rather than to trust in God and believe that God's grace will come in and heal that situation, whatever it is. You're hanging on to defiance, self-sufficiency, indifference, or you're going to be into prejudice, one of those others. So we're going to look this week for those roadblocks that we're going to anchor to. It says that I'm going to try and find these more solid and formidable for these people than any erect. So I'm trying to anchor onto this to defend myself from something, okay? So we're looking for indifference, self-sufficiency, prejudice, and defiance, okay? Those four anchors, and that will help me to recognize this is part of me not coming to believe in a power greater than myself. This is what I look like when I'm entering that way. One of these principles will be there, and I'm either rejecting faith or I've lost it in that moment. One of those two has happened, okay? When you feel that state of bewilderment, and I know you guys probably never feel that way, but if you bump into someone that's bewildered, see if you can find these four principles and see if they went through them, okay? So you can check yourself too. All right, so then it goes on to help me to recognize, okay, so let's say I am lost or I have rejected faith. There's a whole, check it out, there are 4 paragraphs dedicated to that dilemma. So let's read through those, and we're going to talk about what ails me, what principles can help me to get through that. And what this next paragraph talks about. Look, here's what's happening. Go ahead.
Any number of AAs can say to the drifter, yes, we were diverted from our childhood days too. The overconfidence of youth was too much for us. Of course, we were glad that good home and religious training had given us certain values. We were so sure that we ought to be fairly honest, tolerant, and just, that we ought to be ambitious and hardworking. We became convinced that such simple rules of fair play and decency would be enough. As material success founded upon no more than these ordinary attributes began to come to us, we felt we were winning at the game of life. This was exhilarating, and it made us happy. Why should we be bothered with theological abstractions and religious duties, or with the state of our souls here or hereafter? The here and now is good enough for us. The will to win would carry me through. But then alcohol began to have its way with me. Finally, when all my scorecards read 0, and I saw that one more strike would put me out of the game forever, I had to look for my lost faith. It was an AA. that I rediscovered it, and so can you.
And that's what we're talking about now, is how do we find that lost faith or that faith that we've rejected? And that's what it's trying to tell us. We're going to get it from other people. We've also learned the principles we read before this, to search and research again and again, always with the open mind. So we're going to ask people, how do you talk to God? How, did you ever have a point where you rejected, or you feel like you lost your faith, or you rejected it? How did you get through that? What was your dilemmas? You ask. That's how you discover how to maybe you can approach something. It doesn't mean they're going to have the necessary right answer, but they might give you some insight as to some answers that you will find within yourself. And that's what's trying to tell me. In AA, I can rediscover it. And that means that, or church, wherever it is you're going, you need to rediscover it. And you need to rediscover this God in a good way. How do you live with God? Don't you feel separated sometimes? Ask your questions, whatever your dilemmas are. You know, because you want to know these things so you can understand how to approach them, or what principles can maybe get you through them. So this is going on this week, as we're kind of saying how we get that diverted. In other words, it's trying to help me to understand just being a good guy and doing the right thing is not good enough, man. You got to be brilliant at this point. You're little mediocre, I'm going to be a good guy, nice to people here and there so I can get what I want. Doesn't work anymore. That stuff, so you're a sellout. You already tried that route. It didn't work. How's your relationships? Look up in life. What did you get out of that kind of attitude, kind of half-ass God thing, kind of a half-ass nice guy? But when it really comes down to it, and it comes down to what decisions you got to make, you choose comfort over character. You always compromise your character to get your comfort, which could be a broken relationship, that job, that money, or that social setting where you want to be around people, so you're hanging out with people you really don't like so you can hang around with people that other people that are around them instead of being true to yourself. And I'm sure none of you do that stuff, but it goes on rampant out here. You know, and that means we're wearing faces again. It means that I don't wear faces. I start to be genuine to myself. I start to learn what that looks like. See that? So it's not to just be a good guy running with the pack and, oh yeah, everybody loves me and smiling, I'm here and I'm this, I'm that. Being genuine, man. If you want to be around people, find out why. Why do you want to be around them? What is brilliant about them? What is it that inspires you about them? If you're just around people so you can get to that next person, you're just doing the same thing you've done all your life. You're just doing it here now. You're not, maybe not doing it out at the work environment or maybe there, but you're just doing it in the same thing in recovery. And soon enough, if you're doing it here, you're going to end up doing it there. We got to quit wearing faces is what it's saying. It's saying be with this God thing. Don't wear faces anymore. Watch the people that do. See what they look like. They're bewildered. They're the kind of people that are doing good things, but it's not real genuine. You feel like they're okay, but something just disconnects. That's self. What you're recognizing is their ulterior motives, the agenda that probably is there that's underlying that current. But we can't run around questioning everybody, so we're trying to find it in ourselves. This is helping me to guide, to let me know, look, you can prosper on this. You get people in recovery just because their money, their checkbook's looking better, and because they got somebody on their arm does not mean their life is coming together. Matter of fact, it could be the opposite, because if they're wearing faces even more, and they're thinking that stuff's even more important, then it's just going to undermine that ultimate undermine, which is that recovery that they've been working for so long. That's how this stuff happens. This is how people get out and go out and get loaded again. Because we forget. It's a disease of forgetfulness. Any malady is a disease of forgetfulness. Anytime you've lived a life where you've run yourself into a hole or you've run yourself into broken deals, you got a purposeful forgetter. How else would you get there? There's got to be something inside you that's rationalizing the unrationalizable. But somehow we do. What does Einstein say about what's insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. That's the nature. How can I expect something different when I've come from the same place? If I want something different, then I got to come from a different place. I got to come from a different mind. I got to come from a different source if I want my life to turn out different. And that's a risk. That's that unknown. But see, it's a greater unknown than you can even imagine. That's what recovery is telling you, that your Creator will do for you what you could never do for yourself. You will look back and find that God did for you far more than you ever could have done for yourself. When you thought God wasn't there, God was doing for you even more at that time. It was you that couldn't see it, but it didn't matter because God carried you through, because you kept performing, because you stayed with it, because you didn't give up on this recovery thing, because you didn't give up on the good life thing. Look what you sell out for, right? Go back to the money, go back to the relationship, go back to the broken social circles. All you're selling out for is for that which is never going to fill you up. You only get filled up inside, so why would you ever sell out? Think about what you're going to go back to. Why wouldn't I fight for the good life? Why wouldn't I say, no, relationships can be healthy. I can learn how to have healthy relationships, and I can do a work and career that I love to do. I don't have to compromise anymore. There is something I can be passionate about. What can I do and be passionate about? Not just do what you love to do so you're a victim again, but do what you love to do, and if you are doing what you love to do, you should be better than anybody else at it, because that's what a master does. Anytime you put love into anything, you never do it half-ass. That's what love is. That's what we're learning in recovery. And when you put love in your recovery, you get a full measure in return. Freely as you have been given, freely you must give. That's what it's all about. We become givers instead of takers. That's the great dynamic that starts to change. How it changes is that we don't go into the superficial crap. Just because we got money in the bank and just because it looks okay on the outside don't mean that things are okay on the inside. But that doesn't mean that things aren't either. It's learning to realize that any success we're having today is God's success. If material success comes, it's God's material success, not ours. The minute I take credit, that's when I start counting. Let alone if it goes the other way. What if material success starts to go the other way and it ain't success, it's starting to become material declining or you're losing some. Now what are you going to do? Because, you know, God's the grace for the good stuff. What happens when the bad stuff goes down? Or it isn't bad. It's just a change. And it's just another lesson that's going on. How do you not interpret that as bad if you're not making as much money when you gave that to the grace of God? These are some of the dilemmas that will go on in recovery. And there are no pat answers for all this stuff. That's why it's a way of life that has to be organic. It's alive now to figure out all this crap because there's an unlimited possibility of things that can happen in one day at 70,000 thoughts a day. So you live in a world of infinite possibilities, but you have so many probabilities based on how you live today of what's going to come out at the end of the day. If you live like a bonehead and you're argumentative and you're uptight and you're reckless in your emotions and you're erratic in your feelings, then you're going to probably have a bad day and bad things are going to follow. If you're walking around staying with the grace of God, staying quiet, not getting into erratic emotions, learning how to hold back, pause your tongue, see what happens, be the wise one, be patient, say something kind, tell someone supportive, be supportive of your own self. It's amazing how wonderful things can happen by the end of the day where you thought it's going to go to hell in a handbasket. By the end of the day, everything has changed. Your whole life can change in recovery in one day for the better. You see, when it does change, that change is not from that one moment. It's from an accumulation of many moments that manifested that big change. But we think our life changes in one day, so in essence it does. We must realize that life change comes as what we're being re-given for all that we've given out in our life. So this stuff becomes worth it. Now we're going to say, here comes another problem. If you start to think your way through this recovery. Go ahead. Let's do that paragraph. 29, last paragraph. Or does somebody want to share on that? Anybody want to share on that stuff we just read?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the alcoholic. I find myself in this paragraph. You know, the childhood based kid that thought that unfounded wanting, and then the material success or belief success, and why should I be bothered by theological abstraction and religious duties? And then I come to learn that I came back to a workable faith through AA. And I saw it as it happened. It happened because I stood at the meetings. I must have picked up through osmosis what was being said, and circumstances in my life brought me again to faith. And I'm sure glad that it did. And reading these last three paragraphs, I saw myself in them all. And it just reminds me that all of these components of my sobriety, all of the components of my life have brought me to this point. And all I need to do is keep moving forward. And that's very satisfying. That's very reassuring. Because it's true. I believe feelings can kill me. Or I have doubts that feelings can kill me. And I come now to understand that they're just feelings. And that there's something to be learned from them, to be understood, and something to be built. I think now I'm in the process of building my life as opposed to rending my life as I did, much to my ignorance. But I just want to say that I relate.
Well, yeah, remember, feelings also are a byproduct of thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay. Thought, feeling, action.
Well, I know they're from my thoughts.
Sometimes our feelings aren't true. They aren't accurate. They're a byproduct of bad thoughts. That's where we start to recognize, I'm feeling this. Now, is this genuine or is this fabricated from a lie that I've spun outside of God? Is this part of my malady that is the byproduct of that. Sometimes I don't see the thoughts, but we do connect, we do feel the feelings. We've learned in recovery that the feelings I'm having today are potentially 90 days to 6 months old that I didn't deal with my yesterdays ago. So that's the confusing part in life, is you're feeling bad today, but you're thinking there's nothing going wrong today. Well, that's because you've been stuffing that stuff for so long. You're feeling yesterday's feelings, and you're feeling it in today's life, and that gets real confusing. That's why we clean house and trust in God. It says in the page 100 of the big book, burden the conscience of any man or woman. They can get well regardless of anybody or anything, provided they clean house and trust in God. Well, the cleaning house is so you can get current, to get your current state of emotions. We're so behind the mark, we're dealing with emotions that happened so many years ago because they weren't dealt with. And you see how that can be real confusing in your personal relationships, and where you start going on in life? You're starting to feel things that you just didn't deal with from your last relationship. Now you're going to recreate them in this relationship and tell the person you're starting out with that they're reminding you of the old relationship, and it isn't them reminding you. It's your thought life that hasn't been dealt with from that old relationship, recreating this stuff back in the relationship. They haven't reminded you of anything. You're just recreating that crap in them, and then you blame them for the shit you're feeling. Excuse my language. And that's why we don't blame people for our feelings or thoughts anymore. Our thoughts are our own, our feelings are our own, and our actions are our own. It's nobody's fault why I behave inappropriately or in any way whatsoever. You can't blame anybody anymore. Step 4 tells you that. You got to remove blame from your thought and your speech. There is no reason or no excuse ever again to act dysfunctionally because of what somebody else did, ever again, in this spiritual way of life. That's what step 4 is telling you. No blame in your thought or your speech. So you start to realize, I can't live that way anymore. I got to stop projecting my yesterday's feelings into today's relationships and start getting into today's feelings. How do I do that? That's what inventories do. They help me settle with the past. Once I'm settled with that, that's over with. Now I'm just trying to get current, man. What am I feeling today, God? It's a discovery process. I do a book. I send it out in the workshop. It's pages on feelings. Words that describe feelings, because we don't know how to describe it. I love that page. It says happy, sad. It tells you all these words that help you describe and articulate what you might be feeling, which are things that all of us should have. It should be in the big book, or the 12th. I do believe, because just learning how to recognize what I'm feeling was a journey for me. I used to tell my ex-wife what I was thinking in the situation or what I was feeling. She would repeat back to me what she thought I was saying, and I'm like, man, you're speaking Chinese and I'm speaking English. And it wasn't that. It was that what I thought I was saying wasn't what was being said. I thought I was saying something, but what was really coming out was something completely different. So I'm thinking I'm transmitting something to her, but what she's hearing is completely different from what I'm transmitting. And lo and behold, look, you know what happened the other way? Same thing. She was saying one thing, and I was hearing something completely different. And then now I'm like 10 years into a marriage. And I find that you're talking one way and I'm talking another way. We haven't been talking to each other for a long-ass time. No wonder we don't get along. I keep thinking I'm saying something, you're hearing it, you're not hearing it. You keep thinking you're saying something and I'm hearing it, and I'm not hearing it. That's when you start to learn to communicate. What did you just hear me say? When someone responds or reacts to you inappropriately, or you feel like someone just jarred or did that little double take, what do you think you just heard me say? Because they're responding, they're reacting. They're going to say, I just heard you say that I was the ugliest person in the world. I did not say that. I said that didn't look very good on you. But that's what you're hearing. There you go. Yeah, man. What should I say? You can say there's things that look better on me. Okay, I need a whole list of things that I got to say at the times when you try clothes on, so that I make sure I don't do that. And then when we get to cooking, I need a whole list of things there that I shouldn't say when we get in the kitchen, because that's going to offend you. And then when we get to social events, I need a whole list of things there that I should not say or do, because I don't want to offend you or hurt you there either. And now I need a whole list. I got a list coming out of my pocket of what I should say or do, because I'm so bewildered by those relationships that I have that are confusing me and I'm confusing them. And the reality of it is, you see, the one thing that I know for sure that I can say is how I feel and what I'm thinking, and you can't change that. You can't argue with me about what I'm thinking or what I'm feeling. And what I also learned in recovery is, don't let anybody, your relationship, your wife, your husband, tell you what you're thinking or feeling ever again. And if you catch them doing that, they've been doing that for a long time, and they're doing that to control your ass. And they are controlling you, because if you're letting them get away with it, that's how they're controlling you. They're controlling you by saying, you make me feel. You know, when you did that, I felt really bad. That made me feel really bad. Right there, you got to say, look, I'm hearing what you're saying in terms of describing that my action made you feel bad, but I gotta let you know I will not and am not going to take responsibility for your feelings. They're your responsibility. If you want to know what I want you to feel, I want you to feel nothing but elated by my presence. That's all I ever want you to feel. That's my feeling. If you're saying I got control of your feelings and this is your state of your being, if I'm going to control your feelings, then I want you to be happy all the time. So that's not realistic either. So it's completely unrealistic to say you make me feel. How many times have you heard that? You don't even know. When you hear that, it triggers an instinctual response. You hear way beyond that. You make me feel. Their instinctual response is, I don't make you feel crap. But you know what? You make me feel bad. I'll tell you, you want to make who feels. You want to know who makes feel? Let me tell you how you make me feel. And that starts that war. And that's that alibi. That's that justification. I wouldn't have said those vicious things about how you made me feel if you didn't say those things about how you said I made you feel. Which one? The first time or the second time? And now you're in an infinite dynamic of questions about which one said it first or didn't say it first, who was more severe or less severe, and now you're measuring the inappropriateness of what was said or wasn't said. I'm glad I'm getting there, everybody, because they're so busy talking about it, they can't hear the rest of it. The point really being is that absorbing those relationships and understanding that what I've got to learn to do is tell you how I'm thinking and how I'm feeling and practice that. This is what I think, this is what I feel, and if someone says, well, this is what I think you think, or this is what I think you're feeling, you got to correct them, and vice versa. Stop telling people what they think or feel. I can't tell you how many people call me, and I always tell them, you've got to quit concluding what's in other people's mind and attach your emotions to what your mind has told you is in their mind. Have you ever heard me say that before, over and over and over again? Because it's so true. Because you just lived in a world that didn't. You just made a world happen that isn't happening. It's happening in your head, but it's not happening in reality. So you're telling someone in your head, you're concluding what they're thinking or the way they're acting towards you, and how you should respond to what they're thinking or how they're acting towards you when they haven't said anything or done anything to tell you that they're upset with you or they're uptight with you, but you're already concluding they are, and then you respond to them accordingly to what your mind has told you. And they go, so how you doing? I'm fine. What do you think? And they're like, whoa, easy. They don't understand how you're coming on so strong. And you're coming on strong because of all the stuff you've built up in your head about what they're not doing, but what your mind is telling you to think they're doing. And again, I just had an argument about something that's not happening. Can you imagine how many times we get in and go into areas in life and create unrealities out of things that aren't happening? We turn the reality of things to unrealities, and we turn unrealities into realities. And what that means is that we start to create scenarios that can never be treated because they're not real. The truth will set you free, at least start in the truth. That's why I stick to what you think and what you feel. If you want to tell someone about how maybe they can grow or do something, you tell them through your life, not their life. Well, I can only tell you what I did. How does recovery start out? Well, when I was drinking, I did this. People don't walk in your house and say, you're an alcoholic, you drink like an alcoholic, and you look like an alcoholic. You smell like one too. You know, you go and say, well, I don't know if you're an alcoholic, but I can tell you that when I drank this way, I knew I had a problem. When I had this, it's always about I. Because no one can say that your experience is different than what your experience is. You see, the power in the I am is also something you got to recognize too. When you say I am, whatever follows is like putting concrete blocks on your feet. I am learning. That's why no one sits in here and says, I am really messed up when it comes to personal relationships. What would be a better way to word that? I am learning. Eric said that, didn't you, Eric?
Yes.
So I am learning to have better relationships. That changes everything. As opposed to me being bad in relationships, I'm learning to have better relationships, and they're getting better all the time. Now we're going somewhere. But to say that I don't know how to have relationships is almost like a label that I carry around with me. And if the right people listen, you're going to chase them right away from you. Because if people really hear what you're saying, they're going to run and check it out. They do. They really hear it. Even if it doesn't register consciously, it registers, and they get away from you because you just said you don't know how to have relationships. You just said that you're emotionally not very available for other people because you didn't get a lot of hugs when you were a kid. You just said that you've heard a lot of people that your relationships don't last, that people always leave you angry, that you don't know any of your ex-girlfriends or boyfriends, that you don't know any of your old relationships. When you run into those, where are all those people you keep having relationships in your life? How come no one's left? Because you keep throwing people away. You keep burning through relationships. Well, that's what you did when you were getting loaded. You shouldn't be doing the same thing in recovery. People should start accumulating, not disappearing anymore. You start to accumulate friends and relationships. You're not getting rid of them at the same pace you were getting rid of them when you were drinking and using. Something's wrong. You should never lose relationships. This is about mending friendships, not getting rid of new ones. But I see it all the time. It's the saddest thing I see in recovery is that turnover rate is huge. But people, I'm not hanging out with that person anymore. They did me wrong over there. They did me wrong over there. It's like we're all done each other wrong. We've been doing wrong for so long. We got together. All the wrong in us got us together. Now you're going to act. You're going to be surprised because someone did something wrong. You're in a society of broken people, the most dysfunctional people, and you're going to get upset because someone said something they shouldn't have said, because someone disclosed something they shouldn't have disclosed. Maybe you shouldn't be running around telling people the things that you don't want them to know. That's something in recovery too. You know, we do that. You get this bug of like, I want to tell everybody my life story. And a year later, you're like, God, did I really say that to you, man? Oh my God, Jesus Christ, I can't believe I said that to you. I told you that. See, you get let alone you hear it out the podium. Don't do your fourth step at the podium, and it's not your fourth, it's the fifth. Don't do your fifth step at the podium. Why do people want to? You know why? Because nobody's going to rebuttal them. They can get up there, whine, cry, tell you everything is wrong with them. Nobody's going to stand up and say, well, you know what, let's go back to that one defect you were just talking about there in that situation. They got to hear you out, cry at the podium, tell your mother, your father molested you, and how inappropriate that is. And you're dumping everybody in that room, all this massive chaos that's going on in your life. Nobody can help you. Nobody can understand you. And now you've just put another label on yourself to distinguish yourself as different than everybody else in the room. And all you did is you disclosed something you should have never disclosed. You should have kept it in private. Some things are meant to be kept in private because that's between you and God and that person, whoever it is, that you admit to God, to yourself, and another human being the exact natures of your wrong. Not God to yourself and all human beings at all meetings at the podium, exact natures of your wrongs. There's nothing in there like that. It's another human being, not multiple human beings, human being, not human beings. And that's the things we get caught up in. Why? Because there's self-gratification in it. Why do I want to tell you I ripped you off? So I can feel better, not so that you can feel better. What happens when people first get sober? They want to tell you how they screwed you over. I'll never forget when I don't know what I was, 45 days sober. I called up some girl that I took some sunglasses from. She was not happy to hear that. Not only was she not happy, she wanted to know how the hell I was going to pay her back for me. And I was like, whoa, we've gone too far. I'm going to have to get back to you on that one. And I realized then I just wanted to feel better. It says in step 9 that I can't buy the expense of somebody else's sanity at the robbing somebody else of their soundness of mind to get mine. It won't work. I'm never going to find soundness of mind by stealing it from somebody else. I'm not going to feel better because I just told you how much I shystered you or ripped you off or took something from you. God forbid, I had no plan on how to pay you back. I just say, hey, I'm an alcoholic, I'm sorry. Step 1 in 10. It doesn't work that way, and that's the mentality we get too. If I say I'm sorry, somehow that's some magical cure. I apologize, I made an amends. What the hell is an amends? You don't even know what an amends is. And anybody that says they got a resentment ought to be booted out on their ass. I've never seen anywhere in here say anything other than resentments are the #1 killer. Never said contain them, never said keep having them, never said talk to people about them. Anytime someone says, I got a resentment, it's like, stop right there. Where's God in that statement? I got a resentment. How then you are without God? That's all you're saying is that I've departed from God and I've returned to myself and I'm going to take it out on all of you. I'm just calling it a resentment now. So you now just said you're going to be dysfunctional, act inappropriate, and be all over the map. Well, we already know that about you. So now it's just you're just announcing it. So now how do we stop you? Because you said, I told you I was going to do that. I told you what would happen if that went that way. How many times do we say that? How can we have this deep need to say, I told you so, because our whole lives we feel as though we've never been heard. So we have this deep need to say to people, I told you so, and that's not the situation. You're better off saying, you know what, I feel like I've never been heard in life, and start from there. Can you hear me right now? Because that's something to start with. That's something to say, and someone can hear you and say, I feel like I've never been heard in life. Usually people want to hear what you have to say if you can just say that. But if you walk off and say, I got a resentment to you, then people just get turned off. They're not going to come to you. They're going to go away from you. These are some of the things we got to learn. We got to get out of that old self and follow the dictates of these principles that are here in these steps in alignment. And they're aligned in the order form to peel each layer that needs to be peeled so that I can get there. And it's telling me, do not get your intellect involved in this program recovery anymore. And this next one, where are we at? Did we read it? We didn't read it. Intellectual self-sufficient. What time is it? I can't even see my phone.
It's about 9:15.
Okay, well, let's read that then, 9:18. Okay, let's read that one and last one on 29. And now we're going to come out. We just talked about the dilemma of lost or rejected faith. A lot of stuff going on there. Now we're going to talk about the next problem, intellectual self-sufficient.
Now we come to another kind of problem, the intellectually self-sufficient man or woman.
Now, I'm sure that none of you are like this, but please try and listen to this, because I probably would venture to say that none of us can escape this paragraph.
To these, many AAs can say, yes, we were like you, far too smart for our own good. We love to have people call us people.
So how many times have you sat in rooms and think you're smarter than people that are in this room? I hate to say it, but all of us do it. And that's why when Bill Wilson said alcoholics have a higher earning potential than others, it was almost like the worst thing you could have said. It's almost the one thing that we wish you would have said. But there's always a purpose for it, too, so don't get me wrong. But it's like we take it the wrong way, like our disease works at work. Like as long as I'm at work and I put my disease on work, man, I'll get it done. I'm a beast. Look out. But you don't. See, when your disease does it, it doesn't do it with love. It doesn't do it with passion. It just does it with an immense amount of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder behavior. That's how it does it. That is not with love, and that's not with passion. When you do something and you really love something, you're going to do it with passion. Your disease is never going to produce anything good, but there's something in our mentality that thinks the disease is going to produce something good. It just means that if you look at it in reality, alcoholics and drug addicts are pretty intelligent people. Why? Because they had to be. Because they had to survive with drugs and alcohol and somehow learn how to live while they were getting loaded and screwing up their life without it coming to house crashing too soon. So it takes intelligence to keep things put off and stayed off. Bad intelligence, but there's a certain amount of navigation that's got to go on. That's why we're more intelligent. And we're also more intelligent because we've had to go into places that most human beings never have to go to. We've got to create lies and alibis most human beings never have to try and use it. You're not supposed to use your creative imagination to manipulate and tell people lies and try and mislead people, but that's what we do with it. We're supposed to use it for meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. That's where that creative imagination is supposed to go in. Or a project, or at work, you create a script, you got some passion, some concept you want to develop. That's what your creative imagination is for, not to tell lies or purposely forget. We've used it the wrong way, so now we're going to start to use our creative imagination the right way. And one of the things we've got to get away from is that intellect, and that's what it's going to say. I got to stop being in rooms full of people and separate myself by thinking I'm smarter, you're wrong. If it isn't I'm smarter, it's you're wrong. It's what you're saying is stupid. It's what you're saying doesn't make sense. Well, you got part of it, but you don't got all of it. It's what you're saying has judgment. Now I'm saying I'm smarter than you. So take note. It's not always thinking, I'm so much more intelligent than you. That's the belligerent state. That's that savage state that we talked about at the beginning of step 2. So when you use the intellectual self-sufficiency, think of it in a subtler way. How do you use your intellect in a subtle way to hide it from others, but to manipulate and get what you want? That's what this is talking about, not just the belligerent state. Go ahead and finish that up.
We use our education to blow ourselves up into frightful balloons.
Stop there. Education is, I'm sorry, it's such a good point. Education is drugs and alcohol. How many times have you been educated on how to use drugs and alcohol, what alcohol and drugs do, how they affect people, so you can use that education to blow yourself up into a prideful balloon. That's why you hear people when they first get sober preaching to the rest of the world that they just got sober and the rest of the world should get sober too. Because you're using your education to blow yourself up into a prideful balloon, the limited education you have in recovery, but you're still using that new education to blow yourself up. That's an example of it that one might not look at as using my education, but in fact, that's what you're doing. So now that happens on any level. How do I use what I know, I think, more than you, against you or against other people? That's what it's talking to me about. Go ahead.
Secretly, we felt we could float above the rest of the folks on our brain power alone. Scientific progress told us there was nothing man couldn't do. Knowledge was all powerful. Intellect could conquer nature. Since we were brighter than most folks, so we thought, the spoils of victory would be ours for the thinking. The God of intellect displaced the God of our fathers. But again, John Barleycorn had other ideas. We who had run so handsomely in a walk turned into all-time losers. We saw that we had to reconsider or die.
So the reconsidering or die means we stop cutting people off. We stop thinking they know what they're going to say, what they're thinking about. We stop thinking what they said was limited. We leave our minds open. Maybe they are going to teach us something. Isn't it the simplest ones that usually teach us the deepest lessons? So if it is about intellect, that's where we're starting to learn this. I'm not going to judge people by their intellect anymore. I'm not going to walk around and think that person doesn't know, but they do know here. Because I got to remember, everybody has brilliance somewhere in their life, and it's going to be in an area that I don't. So just because I might be smart in one area, there's someone sitting next to me that's smart in another area that's just as equal and just as important as the area that I think I'm smart in. But I forget all that. I forget the scope of relativity. Just like my basic troubles are the same as everyone else's, I got to remember my intelligence is just the same as everyone else's, and that everybody should be intelligent in this world I live in. I don't want to disconnect anymore. That's what it's telling me. Stop intellectually disconnecting from people around you. Find a way to connect to them intellectually. Don't find a way to disconnect. That's what you've been doing your whole life, and you've been doing that to try and make yourself feel better and feel superior to them. So this is a paragraph of saying stop trying to look this week and see if in areas in your life where you're intellectually disconnecting. Go ahead.
We saw that we had to consider or die. We found many in AA who once thought as we did. They helped us to get down to our right side. By their example, they showed us that humility and intellect could be compatible provided we place humility first.
That means, you know what? Sometimes when someone's wrong, we don't tell them they're wrong. We just let them figure it out for themselves. We don't have to walk around and show people how wrong they are. We can let them find out in their own loving way, and that's what humility is. We may realize they're wrong. We may even intellectually see where they're wrong, but we realize it's not our time. And just saying I'm being honest when you're hurting someone is not honesty. You're being hurtful, not honest. Saying things that shouldn't be said at the inappropriate time is not being honest. That's called hurtful. It doesn't matter if you say a truth. You can say something truthful, but at that particular moment, it's being hurtful. So when people run back on that, well, I'm just saying the truth. I'm just telling you how I really feel. You're being hurtful. Don't confuse yourself with the truth and an aggressive animosity or an aggressive action towards someone. That's a bunch of crap. When someone says, I'm just telling the truth, you're being hurtful right now. Because that's the truth. If you want to know what it is. So it turns out it's telling me, hey, look, man, stop using your intellect. Just let humility. Let people be wrong. Let people do what they do. Don't have to correct them all the time. Go ahead.
When we began to do that, we received the gift of faith, a faith which works. This faith is for you too.
Okay, so this week we're going to look for those 4 principles of indifference, self-sufficiency, prejudice, and defiance. That's going to let us know that we're either rejecting or we're losing God. And we're also going to be looking this week to see if our intellect starts to separate us from other people. When we start to use our intellect to chop people down or to hurt them, okay? And that we're going to stop doing that. We're going to try and place humility where we're using that intellect. And when we know we're doing this because it's going to separate us from other people, any thought that separates me from the human being that's in the room that I'm in is going to be a thought of intellect. So I had to realize that every time I separate myself from another human being, it's my intellect that's separating me. And that's where that isolation, that loneliness comes in. So in this particular concept, when I look for where I'm intellectualizing things, I'm looking where I feel that disconnect with the people that I'm around, and I know I'm starting to intellectualize. I'm starting to try and rise above them because I'm either feel threatened or I'm using my thinker too much, okay? All right, anybody got any questions or anything else they want to say on that note?
Yeah, Laurel, hi. I just wanted to share my experience when we were reading through this piece. It just struck me that what I came to was a drifter, and realizing that it's talking about it in relation to being bewildered, but I read it like not anchored to, right? Just drifting along.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that that's kind of what I've been doing in my job lately, is not being passionate into it, not really being setting goals, not, just coming in, drifting, not anchored to anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that it was leading to self-sufficiency and needing to feel superior to people. And I just saw that connection right there.
I love that. That's great. Yeah, look for when you're drifting this week. I like it because the drifting is another essence of, again, losing connection with that God that we're trying to stay connected to, is that sense of drifting, disconnect. So that's a very good one. All right, anybody else on that?
Just the forgetfulness playing to that, like if you didn't have a job and you had a bill, you were stressed out. Now you got a job, it's 3 months later, now you don't want that job. So, you know how you forget how it was when I was loaded. Did I forget where I went?
Yep, absolutely. And that means your intellect's taking over. That's exactly where the intellect's taking over. And I'm using it to purposely forget something that I don't want to forget because it helps me to learn how to be today. I want to remain eternally grateful, to remember that pain, because that helps me decide what I'm going to do today. Lack of humility would be to forget. Humility would be to remember for the purpose of going further.
We have that desire to treat ourselves bad.
Mm-hmm. Page 45, pride and reverse, melancholy one, yeah. Yeah, pride and reverse. Yeah, and we do. We like to punish ourselves. We all think we haven't measured up. If you became a drug addict, alcoholic, but in any dysfunctional thing or been in dysfunctional relationships, you think there's something wrong with you. So that's going to be that part of you that you think you need to be punished, that you haven't been a good person. And that's some of what we learn is I got to get that out. some of that truth comes out when you start to come to believe in the power of greater yourself. You start to realize how much you have been bashing on yourself, how much you don't give yourself very much leeway, and that it is time to embark on that journey of learning to be in self-love, man. Announce it today. Walk around this world and say, hey, ask someone, hey, do you know how to love yourself? And watch how uncomfortable they get. And you learn to be comfortable in saying, yeah, I know how to love myself. And what a great journey we should all be on, learning to love ourselves more and more each day. Don't you think that's a good idea? And most people will say yes, but asking someone, do you know how to love yourself? You'll start to realize not very many people know how to do it. It's a very foreign concept. When I even say to people, yeah, man, I'm learning to love myself all the time, like, how do you do that? And it's practice. That's all. Just the same way, how would I start learning to throw with my left hand instead of my right hand? One throw at a time. And then pretty soon, once I throw long enough, that left hand's going to start to work like the right hand, and I'm going to feel like I can throw with either one. You know, and that's the way life is. That's the way this program recovery is. It is awkward at first, but that's why pain is the touchstone of all spiritual growth. And that it is painful to throw with my left hand when I know I can throw better with my right. But sometimes I can't get to my right hand, and all I got is my left hand. And that's the way this program recovery is. You might want that, but you aren't always going to be firing all 8 cylinders. Sometimes you just need God to be where God needs to be, and God will lead the rest. Sometimes I need to just let it be and not fight it and know that it'll be taken care of. That's the kind of position I got to get in. I got to stop trying to manipulate and run the show and enjoy the ride. Enjoy the ride by the grace of God, knowing that God's got something good planned, and to not get in that dismal idea. And if I got feelings of not feeling very good, it's because thoughts are preceding them, and ask God to show me what those thoughts are that may be blocking me today. So we got a few assignments to do this week. Let's get them done, and you guys have fun this week, okay? That's all the time we got for tonight. Good job. And